Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Switch Statement Podcast. It's a podcast for investigations into miscellaneous tech topics. This is our 24th and final episode on Gödel, Escher, Bach by Douglas Hofstadter. Hey, John. How are you doing?
Hey, Matt. How are you?
I am doing all right. We're finally at the end.
Yep.
Of a very long journey. A long and unusual journey. It's as if we fell down the Alice in Wonder rabbit hole of Gödel, Escher, Bach.
Yeah, and then fell into a strange loop, which looped back to the top, and we just kept falling in it.
It's kind of a Klein bottle-esque contorted geometry.
Yes, exactly.
I'm actually kind of amazed that he did not talk about Klein bottles at some point during this. Because I feel like a Klein bottle kind of has that...
It's like a physical
Gödelian
manifestation. Yeah.
Strange loop.
It also just seems like something Escher would draw.
Now, are you able to have a real physical Klein bottle, or is everything just a fake? Like, is it fake?
Well, there is a number file video where a guy has a Klein bottle, but yeah, it might have been just an approximation of a Klein bottle. I almost think by definition it can't exist because it doesn't have any...
It has a self-intersection, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. Like, I think what has to happen is in order for that self-intersection to work, you kind of need to cut through the side in a way that you can. I think you can make it, but it punches out in a way I think you should technically have to have both the one surface remain intact and then the tube also remain fully intact. So I don't think that works.
And once you have a Klein bottle, can you then use it for anything? You can't actually put liquid in it, right?
I don't know. This is a good question.
They probably answered these questions on the number file video, but it's just been a while.
So anyway, we are at the end, and our typical procedure is to ask a few questions. Do a little book review.
Let's do it.
All right, I'll start off. Who is going to get the most value from reading this book?
Yeah, it's a good one. I mean, I found this material to be valuable, but I also found it in a weird way to be not valuable at all. It's a philosophical book. It has I would say that it borders way more so on philosophy than the typical thing that I read. I generally find raw philosophy to be annoying almost because it doesn't seem to have any applicable purpose. That's not to say that I don't like philosophy. I mean, I love thinking about philosophy and morality and various things like that. But when it's just discussed in the abstract, it's not as interesting. And some of this book felt like that to me, where it was just these very abstract discussions of what is knowledge, how can it be attained. But yeah, who would get the most value out of it? I realize I'm not even answering the question. I'm just kind of beating around the bush.
Well, I mean, it sounds like you're saying no one gets any value out of this book.
Right, which is not what I think at all. I think a person like us, someone who is interested in software, algorithms, math, someone who's a little bit more analytical. I think this book is just fascinating to someone like that. The discussions of typographical number theory and sort of determining truth by doing logical operations, that sort of thing is really, really interesting. And I think to a person like that, who's sort of biased in that direction in the first place, the philosophical aspects are also very interesting. I really, really like this book, and I'm super happy that we read it. But it's just such an interesting book because it's not really a textbook, it's not a reference manual for anything, but it's also not a raw philosophy thing. It's it occupies this bizarre space in between.
There's very real. I mean, I think the biggest thing that this book talks about is just that you're never going to be able to come up with a formal logical system where you're able to prove every statement that is true.
Right. Yeah, which is a huge topic.
And so
obviously.
I guess if you're that immediately takes it out of the realm of some sort of purely philosophical navel gazing, because it feels like no, there's actually very real world ramifications to that. If for no other reason than it was able to get Russell and Whitehead to stop making more layers of Principia Mathematica or whatever it was.
Yeah. I'd probably also argue that this book has more salience today than it probably had, like, say, in the 90s or early 2000s.
Yeah.
Because of its discussion of AI and how it sort of predicts a lot of what AI is today and a lot of how it functions in a really interesting way. And I think, yeah, again, if you're a person like us who's analytical and interested in these types of things, like, that material is just completely fascinating.
I think the person who would get the most value out of this book is Gödel. So
Yeah.
that's probably...
I mean,
we need to go back in time.
I wonder if Gödel would be happy with this, because it is very much like it's almost like a tribute to Gödel.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, for all of the lip service he pays Bach and Escher, they really are trimmings around the edges of this book, which is really so much more about the work that Gödel did.
Right. It was also, like, it's interesting to have this deep discussion of Gödel's work, because it's something that I never really focused on. I think because I'm such a concrete person, like, I just don't like these abstract ideas that don't appear to have any value. I'll be honest, I kind of always thought of Gödel's incompleteness as that. It's like, what am I going to, oh, okay, Gödel's incompleteness. Now what do I do with it?
Yeah.
But this book, sort of discussing it in depth, gave me a lot of new appreciation for the ideas. Okay, I think we should move on to the next question. Otherwise, I might blather endlessly. How much impact?
The whole podcast. It's just one big blather.
Yeah, but I try not to go too far off the deep end, even though we do that all the time. How much impact did this book have on you?
If I'm giving a straight answer and really kind of looking at my life, I feel like there is very little that this book has changed about how I'm going to go forth and live my life. I really can't say that. Yeah, like, I wasn't the kind of person who was trying to find this. Well, actually, it's funny because in a way, the project that I'm working on, this Glass Goals project, it feels maybe a little bit like an exercise in trying to find this perfect representational system. And maybe I should try to kind of bring myself back from the edge of chasing this platonic ideal of being able to represent any relationship of knowledge. So yeah, I mean, maybe it has a bigger... I don't know if the takeaway is to accept imperfection.
Oh, that is an interesting takeaway. It's kind of this, no matter how much you are able to represent, you'll never be able to represent everything.
Yeah, I guess the question is how broad of a takeaway is Gödel's theory of incompleteness? Is it this pretty narrow thing where it's like, if you are working in this formal system and you want it to represent every true statement, you're not going to be able to do that? Or is it this broader statement where it actually makes claims about you're always going to have trade-offs in anything and you're never going to be able to achieve perfection?
That's a question that I feel still has not really been answered for me. And this goes back to, like, the practicality of Gödel's incompleteness. Like, what does it break? What does it prevent humanity from achieving?
I guess one trade-off people have is basically energy cost, right, of things. Where it's like, if you're thinking about an algorithm, if one algorithm is less computationally efficient but better, you're trading off against energy usage, basically. Like, we can't expend enough energy in a short enough period of time to answer this question the way you want. Yeah. But it feels like, let's just get more energy. Like, there's so much energy out there in the universe.
Right. I mean, we're mining Bitcoin.
Exactly. Like, it feels like that's the one thing where if we just relentlessly pursue more energy, that we can just always go with, because I guess because it's like this complexity. You put energy into this complicated system, you can do anything. You can do magic.
Yeah. Dude, so, I do think, I mean, achieving the infinite energy, that'll be...
solve all problems.
It will solve a lot of problems, for sure. It'll be pretty cool.
All right, so did the author achieve his or her goals? Also, we need to read a book by a woman.
Yeah, we do.
I feel like
we do. We keep reading these.
We picked we haven't announced our next book, right?
We haven't, so we could pivot, do a book by a woman. I would be totally down. Read some like Ada Lovelace, old Ada Lovelace.
Did she write
stuff.
a book?
I don't think she's written any books, but we could read her letters. Did the author achieve his or her goal? I think. I mean, this is a tough one because it's like, what was his goal? But I think he did. I think he did achieve his goal. This work seems comprehensive in a way that, like, it is a true kind of magnum opus.
Oh, yeah.
Where I just can't think of other books that achieve this level of, like, depth and scope. And so my guess is that he did achieve his goals. This felt like something that he worked on for a long time and just truly, every little aspect of the book felt like something that he thought about endlessly. And yeah, I think that's part of the joy of reading it is you kind of get this feeling like you're reading, someone's really well thought out thoughts on this topic. And that's satisfying.
It's a really hard book to pin down. You talk about it being a distillation of his thoughts, and I think that's, or I don't know if you use the word distillation, but it did have this stream of consciousness energy to it. He's talking about Gödel's theory of incompleteness, and then he switches to this piece by Bach, and then he talks about this picture created by Escher. And in that way, it feels like part of his intention was to inform, but part of his intention was to amuse and delight. It's like, it's kind of a parade of curiosities.
Dude, I love that. 100%.
He's kind of marching out in front of you.
Yeah, it's like a campfire story. Like,
yes.
Which I think was so cool. Like, it's such an interesting way of packaging this information. And I do think he probably, 1979-ish, that's when this was published. Yeah. Like, this was a time where it was kind of a confluence of, like, people were starting to figure out concepts in AI. Computing was, like, a relatively new thing. I don't know. I think he just felt this strong desire to, like, get his thoughts down in some form. And I think that his thoughts were probably so varying that it was difficult to even find a form to put his thoughts down in. And I think, like what you said, kind of a parade of curiosities, like that was kind of the only thing that can possibly encapsulate all of this stuff.
Maybe I did myself a disservice by not reading the dialogues more, but I found the dialogues kind of hard to get through sometimes.
Yeah, I was
like the one where he's talking about whether or not it's his birthday, Tortoise and Achilles, and they just keep on hammering that and hammering that and hammering that, and it's like, all right, we get it.
Yeah. Now, his sense of humor, like, I like his sense of humor, but it's also, like, just extremely nerdy, and it's kind of like, all right, let's move on.
Yeah, it's like too clever by a half, It's like,
yeah.
All right, I think you're being very cute here. And there were some times where he was able to do these impressive, like, nested tricks, and they were cool.
Yeah.
But other times it was just like a little bit, you're like, okay, we get it.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think, I completely agree. I think a lot of the book was sort of like that, where, he would just discuss some concept endlessly, and you're like, all right, move on. Or another thing he did was he would sort of like rediscuss something over and over again,
Yeah.
but at like varying levels of depth. And you would kind of get this impression like, okay, I wish you had just skipped, 3 of these levels and like went from 1 to 5 or whatever.
Yeah.
So I like if I were to be critiquing the book, like that's definitely something that I would call out: the repetition in the dialogues, the overly almost like saccharine ridiculousness of the dialogues, and also just kind of the redefinition of things. But it is also helpful. He's covering very difficult material, so I think sometimes he would give you like a toe tip, and then he would go a little deeper, and that helps to understand the material.
Yeah. I think metaphor is incredibly powerful, and I think that's kind of what he's trying to do with these dialogues. It's like, okay, let's try to bring this into a scenario that you're able to more easily internalize, and then you can think about it in this abstract context.
All right, let's move to the next question. Rate Gödel, Escher, Bach on a scale of -1 to 1.
I think this might be the best book that we have read, purely from my admiration of it as a work of art, almost.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
Few other books that we've read have felt so precisely crafted, I guess.
It's so ambitious, and it's amazing that he achieved his ambitions. I think a lot about this with movies. Like, I really like a movie that sets out to achieve something and actually does it, even if it's simple. Like, I don't mind a movie that has sort of like a simple goal. Maybe it's like a one-room tense thriller, like some sort of hostage situation or something. Like, a lot of movies revolve around that. And if it sort of sets out a simple goal and achieves it, I like it. But there are some movies that set like really, really ambitious goals and actually achieve them, and those are obviously amazing. But then there's countless movies that set really ambitious goals and like don't even get close.
Just don't deliver, yeah.
Don't deliver at all, and those really bother me. And I feel like this book, the goals that he set in this book are one of the most ambitious things that I've seen in a book.
Yeah.
And I feel as though he either achieved them or got very close to achieving them.
Yeah, I think this was exactly how he intended this book to. You don't get the sense that there was any sort of sloppiness. He has all these like clever little jokes in there. He's inventing all of these different words, and so the attention to detail required to make sure that is all consistent throughout the whole book and well done would take an inordinate amount of work, I feel like.
Yeah. What is your floating point rating?
I would give this a 0.92.
Nice.
What about you?
I think I would have said something very similar. Now that you've said 0.92,
That's the only possible. You're anchored around that. We should make a process of writing it down first.
We should do that, because I want to say I would have said something really similar, 0.92 within the 0.9 and above range. Should we
give like confidence intervals too? I mean, we need to make this rating as nerdy as possible.
Yeah, just after criticizing Douglas Hofstadter of his extreme nerdiness.
Oh, I mean, we never said we weren't hypocritical.
Yep.
So, all right, so 0.92 plus or minus 0.02.
Yeah, I'm into it.
All right, love it. All right, I think we're ready to put Gödel, Escher, Bach to bed.
It's the end of an era, but
Epic.
I'm happy to move on. I'm excited about our next book. It's the Elon Musk biography by Walter Isaacson.
And now, do we want to qualify this at all? We're just like really enormous Elon Musk fans, and that's why we want to dedicate.
I think that's part of what draws me to this material is I used to be an enormous Elon Musk fan, but now I think he's horrible, and I dislike him. What I want to do with our podcast, though, is, read this material and just try to give our completely unbiased view, and hopefully with a unique lens that we can bring. Like, we're both software engineers for multiple decades between the two of us. And so we can probably speak to a lot of what he has done in a somewhat meaningful way. And that's sort of what I was thinking we could do.
And try to get at, was he a success because of his talents or in spite of his negative contributions to the things that he's worked on?
Absolutely. And maybe some amount of, does he deserve the hate that he's getting? I feel like the answer to that question is somewhat self-evident in his own public discourse.
Yeah, but the idea is to try to dispassionately reserve judgment.
Exactly.
It's funny, though, because this book was released in 2023, right?
Yeah. So this was like after a lot of his horribleness, but before
a lot of his like very more salient horribleness. So we might need to do a little bit of a kind of a newsy addendum. Not to mention that by the time we are at the end of this book, it'll probably be 2027. So
yeah, that's true. It's a long book. We might go over it in a different way.
Yeah,
than we did Gödel, Escher, Bach, because there's so much material. So.
The other thing is the information density is almost certainly going to be closer to something like a Doom than Gödel, Escher, Bach. So it's not like each chapter is going to introduce fundamental world-changing concepts multiple times. So
yeah, and just straight up ideas that I don't understand and don't even have the capability to understand.
Inventing new words and new numerical systems. So, all right. Well, I will see you next time for the first section of Elon Musk by Walter Isaacson.
Awesome. See you, man.